Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Matthias. I'm from Iceland. I'm 25 years old. I'm unemployed at the moment.
I love Eurovision. I love the over the top outfits, the unique performances, the homage to culture, the ridiculous melodrama. And like every other fan of the contest, I love to hate Eurovision. It's so easy to get sucked into the competitiveness of the competition, especially when your favorite songs are somehow always ranked somewhere in the middle to lower portion of the scoreboard, and the bland, uninspired pop ballads rise to the top. And as a massive annual international televised multimedia event based on culture, weirdness, and music, there was no way I wasn't going to get heavily involved. Since at the time of writing this script, Eurovision season is fast approaching, and since I am living in Europe, I decided to make this very self-indulgent video, diving into some of my favorite entries from across the history of the contest. I know it's a bit of a mess, but we're just having fun here. What I'm aiming to focus on is what makes these entries so memorable, and take a peek into the interesting careers of some of the artists. I will also be looking into why some of these were received so poorly in their time when, all these years later, some have turned into staples of the contest. These are all going to be my personal favorites, so I'm not going to be covering the obvious ones like ABBA or Celine Dion, because their careers have far surpassed the contest. Often to the point where a good amount of people may not even know they came from or were part of ESC. And don't be mad when I don't talk about your personal favorite Tajikistan classic from 1958 or leave out obvious worldwide pop sensation X. Okay, it's my video and I don't fucking care about Loreen.
Good evening, Yugoslavia. Could I have your votes, please?
I don't have it.
Yeah?
First up on my list, in chronological order, is Jedan Da by the Dubrovnik Troubadours. They are a Croatian band that represented Yugoslavia in 1968, which is interesting enough in itself. It's always a bit surreal when you look back and see that the contest was made up of music from countries that don't even exist anymore. This song is considered to be medieval folk pop and features a mandolin and a flute solo. And wow, look at that staging! It's such a far cry from the grandiose themed stages we are used to now. There's not even any dancing really, just a totally stripped down, straightforward singing competition. Super interesting to look back on and compare. Quite humbling also. The band sports 16th century jester outfits in their performance. This is first up on my list for the unique fusion of the jaunty melody inspired by the Middle Ages and the undeniably catchy and lighthearted pop sound of the 60s that come together perfectly to allow us to ponder wistfully about one day, just one day. They finished 7th out of 17th in the final. This was before things got weird, so I don't have too much to say about this one. It's just a lovely song with a unique musical twist.
And now we're moving on to the next performance. This is Holland. This is Poland.
Skipping ahead to 1975, we have Teach In with Ding a Dong representing the Netherlands.
Ding a dong, listen to it. Maybe it's a big hit. Even then your lover is gone, gone, gone. Sing ding ding dong.
This song is simply meant to be about thinking positively. Though, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that it's written entirely in a minor key, which is an interesting choice. The group performs in the most 70s looking outfits you've ever seen, and yes, it is extremely distracting. And while the performance was tight and the song is a perfect chart topper, in fact, I think this is the only entry on my list that actually won Eurovision, the real reason this one is on my list is for the final note, which is played when the Christmas ornament is smashed with a mallet. Yes, really, that was enough to convince me to add Ding a Dong to this list. But it also gives me a great opportunity to talk about the use of onomatopoeias in Eurovision songs. While Ding a Dong definitely wasn't the first song to do so, the use of onomatopoeias in the title and chorus provide an interesting look into the way language is treated throughout the contest. Some countries tend to consistently submit entries sung in English instead of the national language, perhaps for the sake of being more universally understood. Others instead made use of sounds to achieve that goal, maybe to make it easier to remember and vote for, and to broaden appeal for those who are not native speakers of the national language. For many, seeing an entry sung in the native language of the country they are representing is super important, since it's more common to sacrifice identity for mass appeal. Ding a Dong is still sung in English as well, but many other famous entries stuck to their native roots and opted for the inclusion of nonsensical hooks. Some others even utilize multiple languages in the same song to get a point across, like Boom Boom Boomerang from Austria in 1977, which sounds like meaningless nonsense if you only listen to the English chorus. But it's really a rather sneaky commentary about the commodification of the music industry upon listening to the German verses. It's a great song and a very creative performance, ripe for analysis. Though it isn't a proper addition to this list, I felt it still deserved a proper honorable mention.
Germany, you received from the public votes. I'm sorry, 0 points.
Moving along to 1979, we have Genghis Khan from the German disco group of the same name, representing West Germany, since of course this was before the reunification of Germany. Another interesting side tangent here, East Germany never actually participated in Eurovision, but instead participated in the Intervision Song Contest, which was the Eastern Bloc's version of ESC. Info and archives of the Intervision Song Contest are sparse, but it could be another interesting video topic for the future. Anyway, Genghis Khan formed specifically for the contest and did a few reunions since. At one point, the members even began splitting off and forming new bands, all also under the name Genghis Khan, so it gets rather confusing. But really, their self-titled entry is their only contribution that matters here. This song, paired with the iconic choreography, became one of the most well-known songs to come out of Eurovision. And this too only managed to finish in 4th out of 19. The song, quite obviously, is about the legacy of ruthless Mongol warlord Genghis Khan, and if it hasn't clicked by now, it does bear a striking resemblance to a certain Boney M track. Released just a year after Rasputin, one has to wonder what was so appealing about historical pop disco in the 70s, but I suppose it's far more likely that Genghis Khan just ripped off Boney M and proved for a second time that there is a massive audience for funky disco tunes about controversial historical figures. Just to clarify, this isn't a dig at the song in any way. It's on my list for a reason, and its popularity spanned across an impressive amount of cultures and has been covered and translated into at least 11 different languages. Most notably by J-pop idol group Barry's Kobo in 2008. They kept the spirit of the original sound and dance, albeit with some more sanitized lyrics, making sure to leave out the pillaging and drinking and rape. But regardless, this bizarre cross-mutation of cultures ends up being both super interesting and highly amusing. For 1980, I actually have 2 entries I want to talk about.
Jury. Luxembourg, 1 point.
Portugal.
Oh, Luxembourg.
1 point.
First, there's Sophie and Magali with Papa Penguin for Luxembourg. I just want to quickly pause here and call attention to these beautiful bumpers they had for their earlier contests. They're so stunningly retro with the sparkling pinstripe logo and the later bold colors and chunky graphics of the 80s bumpers. It just scratches such a particular itch in my brain. I love the care they put into these designs. Even some of the Intervision bumpers have been archived, and they too possess this analog kind of look that I love so much. They get real ugly in the 2000s editions of the contest, as you'll see in the later song introductions. And they just stopped caring altogether after that. Okay, moving on. This is a delightful song about a penguin who learns to be happy with his life, despite not being able to fly. The twin sisters sport these fabulous pink and blue Power Ranger-esque suits, while a penguin with a sparkly tailcoat waddles around stage. Nowadays, Eurovision is known for the off-the-wall and oftentimes absurd joke performances, big quotation marks there. But in 1980, the contest was still played pretty straight and kept rather conservative, comparatively speaking. So, while I wouldn't call Papa Penguin a joke entry, far from it in fact, at the time this was so much more fun and playful than what was typical of the contest, and laid the groundwork for the future silliness of the contest in the modern day. The song would eventually be covered and released by the CGI Pigloo in 2006, instantly making it a classic French children's song. Luxembourg would finish 9th out of 19. Unfortunately though, Sophie and Magali's story isn't entirely a happy one. Papa Penguin sold over 1 million copies and was a huge success, but the twins only saw a fraction of it. Their producer Ralph Siegel and record label Ariola were allegedly financially exploiting the twins, only paying them a small fraction in royalties in the wake of the song's success. When their follow-up single failed to top the charts, the label dumped them. They were given a second chance with 2 other singles after that, but those 2 failed to garner any success as well, and they were dropped a second time. Magali would pass in 1996 at only 33 after contracting AIDS, while Sophie seemed to disappear altogether to the south of France, where she became reclusive and suffered from major depressive disorder alone until her death in 2019. Sorry to suck all the joy out from this one, I suppose it's just so that the most playful and innocent entry has such a tragic end, but at the very least we can take solace in knowing that for a brief time they brought a smile to the face of Europe and subsequently became part of so many childhoods. Then, changing gear, we have something on the polar opposite side of the musical spectrum.
Then finally be given to the winning song. Shit.
Telex with Eurovision for Belgium.
Avant d'aller sur la scène est Eurovision. Eurovision. Eurovision.
Where Sophie and Magali's performance is joyful, bouncy, and full of character, Telex is stiff, cynical, and mechanical. This is the first entry to reference the contest by name. The lyrics and performance is sort of a parodied experience of performing in and watching Eurovision. The choreography, if you can call it that, is intentionally robotic and minimal, drawing clear inspiration from Kraftwerk, who are also coming into their own while building up the early electronic scene around this time. Man, I do talk about these guys a lot on this channel. Telex's early synth-pop sound, along with their self-aware approach in song and performance, was completely unique for the contest at this time. Of course, this meant finishing in the bottom half, because new and unique things are scary. They ended up in 17th out of 19 contenders, and in the aftermath, frontman Mark Moulin shared his disappointment about not finishing in last place, which suggests that Telex was probably well aware of the position they were in. Telex stayed true to their electronic sound throughout their career, releasing quite a few electronic covers of well-known hits and remixes, along with their own original music. They refused to play live and preferred to remain nameless and faceless as individuals, which we've now sort of come to expect from electronic musicians alike, but at this time, this is rather unusual. After an impressive 3-decade-long career, the group retired after Moulin's death. It's really fascinating that Sophie and Magali and Telex performed these entries in the same year, as by today's standards it would fit right in, or at the very least be brushed off as another joke entry from a country that didn't want to host the following year. But for the time, both of these entries were out of pocket and, in hindsight, way ahead of their time. In both of these cases especially go to show that the most innovative and creative entries are kind of expected to fail in terms of panel votes.
Yes, no problem. Out of 12 points, go to Ding Dong! Play it!
Now, let me introduce you to the stunning, the titillating Paul Oscar of Iceland with My Final Dance for the 1997 edition of Eurovision. If you couldn't tell, I am positively obsessed with this performance, and it's actually the entry that got me into Eurovision years ago. Sung in a low, almost apathetic tone, the song tells the story of someone who is reveling in the final days of a life of luxury. It actually shares a lot in common with the story of American Psycho, as ironic as that kind of sounds. Between the musings about high-class amenities and the spandex-clad women posed around him like corpses in the start, to the morbid undertones about this being his final dance, the connection starts to make a bit of sense. The whole performance is hypnotizing between the mixed choreography, Paul's seductive gaze, and monotone-like lyrics over a moody dance beat. Even the collection of huge, sparkling rings on his fingers and matching jewelry motif of the stage work so beautifully. Just everything about this is so perfectly executed. Disappointingly, it seems like I'm the only one who thinks so, because My Final Dance finished in 20th out of 24. Besides this being the best entry in Eurovision of all time ever, Paul was also the first openly gay artist in Eurovision. 1997 was also the first year to implement televoting for some countries, and devastatingly, the last year to utilize a live in-house orchestra. For this next bit, I'm actually going to be combining 4 separate entries because of their similarities, and it will probably turn into a tangent anyway, so I'll just start. Comedians have had a pretty terrible track record on Eurovision, to a fascinating extent, and for whatever reason there were a lot of them in the contest between the mid to late 2000s. Most of these were horribly panned by viewers and jurors alike, and controversies and media frenzies ensued. By now, televoting was a staple of the contest, so we can't even blame the jury for this either. In 2006, Iceland had Congratulations by comedian Augusta Erlendsdottir, in character as the controversial Silvia Knight, a vapid and narcissistic celebrity wannabe.
Congratulations, I have arrived. I'm Sylvia Knight and I'm shining so bright.
The song celebrates herself for saving Eurovision and for being the best. At one point in the performance, she even answers a phone call from God. Sylvia Knight consistently made gossip news headlines in relation to the contest due to her insistence on staying in character for interviews and press releases, which of course meant starting drama by insulting other contestants and being overall obnoxious and vulgar per the point of the character.
You vote some ugly people from Finland that don't even have a real makeup artist, and you don't vote me because I'm not a slut from Holland, and I'm not the ugly fucking old bitch from Sweden, and
this is not good. Why are you saying
fuck
this?
you!
Unsurprisingly, she didn't even make it into the finals. In 2007, Ukraine had the now world-famous Dancing Lasha Tumbai by comedian Andrei Danilko as drag persona Virka Serduchka. This multilingual nonsense song didn't just have incredible dance moves and outfits by Dolce & Gabbana, it also came with controversy as the lyrics and title had to be changed in order to scrape by political censors. In case you were wondering what Lasha Tumbai meant, it isn't a Mongolian slang term like they hilariously tried to claim when questioned about it, but rather a bunch of stand-in syllables to replace Russia Goodbye, which may or may not have been the original lyrics. Despite being hated for a number of reasons, including the choice to include a drag queen in the running as representative of Ukraine, this one managed to finish in second and is one of the more well-known entries among viewers. 2008 was a doozy. From Spain, comedian David Ortiz as character Rodolfo Chiquilacuerte with Baila el Chiqui Chiqui. This reggaeton parody runs through the steps for dancing the Cheeky Cheeky, while Rodolfo sports his Elvis wig and toy guitar in front of a group of disjointed backup dancers. He finished 16th out of 25 in a tie with Albania. Then, in the same year, Ireland gifted upon Europe Dustin the Turkey with Irlande 12 points. First, a bit about Dustin for you. He's a UNICEF ambassador, he ran in 2 presidential elections, and he's a puppet. I recommend looking into his political campaigns on your own. It is quite amusing. So people really did not like Dustin. The people of Ireland at the time really didn't like Dustin either. In fact, he was met with boos every time he took the stage for the contest, which I suppose does make a bit of sense when you take into account that Ireland has the record for Eurovision wins and generally tend to take the contest pretty seriously. So to most people, entering Dustin was a bizarre and unbecoming choice, to say the least. As a current resident of Ireland myself, I think it's a real shame that people didn't embrace this one more. I mean, he had some real political draws. Dustin, like Sylvia, also failed to make it to the final. So why am I grouping all of these together? Well, for one, they were all comedic acts that were, generally speaking, poorly received in one way or another. Dancing Lasha Tumbai did ultimately gain more success than infamy, but putting that aside for just a minute to focus on the controversy, I'd like to look at why this is. A commonality between all of these is the criticism that it makes a joke out of the contest, which is silly because Eurovision, to me, at least, is supposed to be this larger-than-life spectacle to celebrate music. Like, entertainment value is actually a requirement here. It's not some highbrow measure of peak musical performance, as much as people do like to call it the Gay Olympics. Not to mention that a lot of the time these joke entries make a point to reference the contest by name and urge viewers to vote for them, like Telex started to do in 1980. So this tends to give people who hate whimsy and joy something to latch onto and discredit. You also have to remember that some people see these artists as literal representatives of their countries, and for better or worse, there is arguably real-life merit and potential repercussions for taking the stage in front of all of Europe. Going through all these years of the contest is actually a super fascinating look into the ways public opinion on certain topics has changed in Europe, and a televised event of this scale undoubtedly contributes to that sway. Plus the evolution of music trends, artistic trends, fashion, and pop culture as a whole. So there is this fear of being perceived as a country based on a performance that maybe doesn't align with your very strong beliefs about how your own country and its people should behave. And, well, to that I say, get over yourselves. The second reason why everyone hates fun is because these guys aren't primarily singers. You know, the singing isn't great, but for me that really doesn't matter. Yes, I know it's a song contest, but we know that these countries probably aren't expecting or even looking to win, so instead they give us a humorous performance with real effort and production value that is amusing to watch. And the songs are legitimately catchy, so really I don't think it should matter that they aren't necessarily the best vocalists. Lastly, there's the controversy. These guys are comedians. In fact, all of them are alter egos or comic personas. So the controversy that comes with simply being in character as a caricature of something is inevitable. Making people mad is kind of just part of being a comedian, and the organizers over at the EBU really don't like controversy. They like to push the image of being this family-friendly, apolitical event, which is a whole can of worms I'm not going to get into right now. But since music and comedy are huge outlets for thoughts on political matters and all means of self-expression, it's hard to enforce this image and keep it totally squeaky clean, especially on this scale. So with all this negativity surrounding comedians, has there ever been a well-received comic entry? Yes, actually, and I enjoy that one too, so I'm mentioning it here as well. In 1987, comic duo Lazy Bums gave us the Bum Song, the only good entry to come from Israel ever. Sorry, aside from the T-Packs. Nathan Datner and Avi Kushner walk us through a day in the life of a lazy bum while dressed as the Blues Brothers and pulling off goofy slapstick dance moves. It is incredibly tame compared to our 2000s comic entries, and was met with a very positive reception from everyone it seems but the Israeli Minister of Culture, who threatened to resign over the song's entry. He didn't, and the Bum Song finished 8th out of 22. And sorry, again, I have to interrupt myself to appreciate the staging here. I love it. Nothing says 80s like random geometry. Never again will a Eurovision stage look like this. Okay. Finally moving on to 2012 to Russia with Party for Everybody by the Buranovo Babushkas, a group of 8 grannies from the small Russian village of Buranovo. This folktronica dance song is about cooking for their children, as they wait for them to come home to party and dance. They actually bake cookies live on stage with a giant oven while dancing with each other and winning over everyone's hearts. This song is so fun and memorable, and their performance is heartwarming and sweet, and thankfully that wasn't totally lost on the voters and judges. They finished in 2nd out of 26, but unfortunately are the first victims of bullying. These lovely grandmothers used all of the group's income to fund the reconstruction of the village's church. The originality and sincerity of the group and their performance is so refreshing for the contest and incredibly grounding to the listener, which makes them stand out in the contest history.
At 76, Granny Natasha will be the oldest Eurovision competitor ever, but she admits her husband's not keen on the idea. After all, she says, if I'm away, who's going to milk the cow?
This next one wasn't even in Eurovision at all, but was in the Estonian national contest to determine their entry for Eurovision. However, it's so bonkers insane that I have to include it here, and it's a damn shame these guys didn't go on to the international stage. This is Winnie Pooh with the translated title, Korsakov, the guy around our area, went to Latvia yesterday. This punk metal band is known for their use of costumes and their 2 drummers. The performance almost gives you whiplash between the rapid-fire lyrics, spinning drummers suspended from the ceiling, and hairy face prosthetics. The whole thing sounds like a rampage. It's incredible. From what I could gather, the song seems to be about a guy who keeps breaking his bones in various accidents, and man, it certainly sounds like it. Winnie Pooh finished 3rd out of 20 in the Estonian National. This next one from 2019 I see as almost the successor to Paul Oscar's entry. Hatari from Iceland with Hatred Mun Sigra, or Hatred Will Prevail, is an industrial post-humanist band that takes on the classic anti-capitalist BDSM military look that is typical for industrial music. But for Eurovision, even in 2019, this was pretty different, but they still managed to throw in that mandatory key change. The angry, distorted vocals that Matthias Haraldsson provides is the focal point of the song for me. It just sets such a menacing, hypnotic tone. This is by far one of my favorite songs to come out of Eurovision. It's always a big deal when alternative music genres make it onto this international stage. Eurovision likes to be safe. They like their pop ballads and their Euro trash and their dance music. It gets to be very predictable, music-wise, year to year for about 70% of the entries. So when a music genre falls outside of the safe pop music sound, it's met with a good amount of attention and fanfare, even if they don't end up at the top. Another example of this is Lordi in 2006 for Finland, and they actually won the contest, and I attribute part of that to Finland having the balls to send a group that is so different to the typical kinds of music in the contest. Yet it's a genre that is still prevalent in that national music scene. So with Hatari, even though they didn't manage to top the leaderboard, the attention they received had a lot to do with the new ground they broke in the musical ecosystem of the contest. They finished in 10th place out of 26. Unfortunately though, due to a problem with Matthias's in-ear monitor, the timing was noticeably off. If the jarring change of pace wasn't a reason to vote against Hatari, this very well could have been for some viewers. Which really is a shame. Every other aspect of the performance is so striking and dare I say groundbreaking. Though, of course, I am biased simply due to the fact that this genre of music is kind of my specialty. See this past video I did on EBM, thanks. Hatari were fairly outspoken about the Israeli occupation of Palestine, a political issue that comes up repeatedly in the competition and, of course, is still ongoing. Despite a warning from the EBU about their statements, Hatari snuck a banner displaying Palestine's flag into the contest and displayed it when their televote points were announced. They were in fact fined for this. The next two entries again just happened to be from the same year, this time 2023, with Finland and Croatia, and I'm sure if you keep up with the contest, you know where this one is going. It's not exactly a hot take for me to be saying this, as near unanimously, the public vote took a firm stance with Finland, thanks to Käärijä and his song Cha Cha Cha. For good reason, too. It's a fantastic song that combines a metal and rap sound and changes genres halfway through to a pop dance tune. Käärijä is charismatic, the performance is high energy, there was a human centipede, plus it was sung in Finnish. Europe fell in love with Käärijä so much that during the live broadcast of the contest, the hosts and spokespeople grew more and more frustrated with people continuously chanting cha 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 over and over, loud enough to drown out their speaking.
Right, just 7. Yeah, he got the 12, you're quite right. Just 7 juries left. Okay, we're going to take a look at the top 3.
Graham Norton is speaking, for God's sake.
Look, but they're very excited and rightly so.
It was a beautiful thing to see, the closest Europe will ever come to being completely united by music. Until the jury stepped in and gave Loreen first place. Oh! For some boring as shit song nobody even remembers because I guess they still couldn't get over Euphoria from 80 years ago, so the final result saw Käärijä in second, despite winning the televote by a landslide, thus making him the second mournful casualty to Loreen. Lots of theories came about to try and explain why Loreen had won the jury vote, because it can't possibly be for her song. These included her notoriety as previous winner, which put her into the public sphere with one of the most well-known dance tracks in the first place, to the anniversary of a certain Swedish band who made music history all those years ago fast approaching for the following year. But in the end, Käärijä is still the one who will be remembered as the rightful winner upon looking back. Now my second pick for 2023, and my last entry on this list, is probably a lot less divisive. Croatia with Let 3 and their song Mama's Ch. Let 3 is probably the most fascinating band to take the Eurovision stage. They are more like a group of performance artists and political activists than a band. They are highly controversial due to their provocative and boundary-breaking performances. The group work very closely with drag artists and are outspoken about LGBT and women's rights, and are publicly opposed to the Catholic Church as an institution and conservative politics in general. Some of their more well-known antics include the following. In 2006, they performed at a large open-air festival, naked. When fined for the incident, they argued against it, insisting that since they all had corks plugged into their anuses, they technically aren't completely naked. They were still found guilty. In 1997, what would have been their 5th album released as a blank CD. Despite this, they still managed to sell around 350 copies. This was in protest to their record label for previously releasing music against the band's wishes. Then, as a continuation of this protest, the band organized a mock suicide by firing squad at a show. There is a lot more to this band, including giant phallic statues and anti-patriotic masturbation. They're just all around an incredible group of artists. This entry for Eurovision was an anti-war message, performed in a fantastical and comedic way. But in a great disappointment, second only to Karja, Let 3 finished in 13th out of 23. I was actually fortunate enough to see the semi-final that included both Finland and Croatia live in Liverpool for that year. It was an extremely surreal experience, and I don't think I'll experience anything like it again. Unfortunately, I'm quite short, so all my videos look like this. But I can confirm that the crowd was absolutely electric once Karja took the stage. But of course, it's one thing for me to sit here and ramble on about the contest. It's another thing to hear first-hand experience from somebody who took the stage herself.
Hi, I'm Dawn Martin, and the year I competed in the Eurovision for Ireland was 1998, and the song was written by Jerry Morgan from Newry, a wee legend, and without him I wouldn't have never sang a note. And the song was called It's Always Over Now.
It's always over now, doesn't ever last that long. Were the feelings that I had ever right or was it wrong? To think that love should last was mistaken on my part, but you promised.
Dawn, hailing from northern border town Dundalk, grew up singing and has participated in her fair share of singing contests, even getting kicked out at one point for winning too often. After being heard on BBC Radio, Jerry Morgan invited Dawn to sing his song. The aforementioned Is Always Over Now. And here she's been so kind as to sit down with me and share some of her experiences of being on Eurovision. What were some of the rules and regulations you had to face that may have not been, obvious to the public?
Yeah, right. Well, so for a start, we had a lot of television crews from different countries. Like, I would say, even if I travel the countries, the world 3 times over, I would never meet the amount of people from different countries and all the brilliant, most interesting class people, like in a week, that I met in 1 week. I wouldn't meet them in a lifetime. It was stunning. And no matter what you think of the Eurovision, it's never what you think. It wasn't what I thought. And I'm sure the next time if I went, it wouldn't be that. Right. Do you know, that kind of way? So, yeah, when you get there as well, there's a lot of parties. And when I say parties, I don't mean parties as in go mad. You have the mayor of Birmingham. You've got to go to this event. Then you go back home, back to your hotel, and then you go get ready for such and such another party for another country. And then, and then at 7 o'clock you might have Germany's party. Wow. Do you know what I mean? So you go and it's and I was going, because I was going to hear about all these parties. I was like, yes, parties. No, it's not
parties.
They are great crack, but you're not allowed to get crazy. But there's 1 or 2 nights then that huge gay following. And I hadn't, this is the crazy to me. I didn't even know at the time. I was fancying everyone. I mean, there wasn't one looking at me. But it was class. It was absolutely amazing. And they're the parties you want to go to.
So did you have people kind of guiding you into these things, telling you what to wear?
You did, you had a lot of RTE support, a lovely woman as well, Fiona, you called her. She was absolutely, she just was larger than life. There was plenty. My mum and dad then got there after a couple of days, but Then you had other television crews taking you, see, because I'm a hairdresser, they wanted to see what you were like on camera. So they rented out one of the top salons in Birmingham, and then got myself and my sister go over and pretend to cut our hair. You know, just to see how you were on camera. Promotional stuff.
Right.
And then after that, there was offers to go to Germany to host like television shows and things like that, but I wouldn't go on my own. It's terrible. I kind of don't know what would happen there.
So were there any difficulties you had to face during the whole process?
Yeah. Because myself and Jerry were cross-border naturally, like Dundalk and Northern Ireland as well. It was kind of like, this is really a really come together kind of a really, really good song for the country. I was so politically unaware about that. I was just, because I didn't have any opinions or any prejudice or anything, you know. And so I didn't really get the whole why this was just super, super important, and it really, really was. And their song was it was penned like that as well. And these guys are from Dublin. Do you know what I mean? It was literally, you know, a song that Ronan Keaton wrote. And whenever we got through and they didn't win, and it wasn't the fact that anybody else won, it was the fact that I got through, we got through. That's when they all went on to all the radio stations and things like that all around the country. And basically she's got weight issues, she's amateurish, she's a hairdresser. And I was like, oh, thanks Jerry Ryan. Thanks Marion Finucane. I'm like literally a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what's going on here. But the support from my town, it overshadowed everything.
So I know you talked about this a little bit already, but what was the environment behind the scenes like between organizers and other artists? And was there this sense of like really serious, like nasty competitiveness?
We were all staying in the same hotel, like the English and the Irish. Really, really glamorous. Backup dancers, they were on top of the pops, all this here, carry on. But when we'd pass each other, there was never a hello. And I was just like ready to go over and ask her, oh my God, your hair's fabulous. I mean, just be normal, a girl. Not even, but it was really straight up competition. I was like, for what? I'm never going to see you after this. And then just basically Christina and the Waves, she was presenting it, if you remember. And because I wore what I wore, my suit and that, and she had won the year before for England, as an American for England, and I didn't even, and this might sound so, this I'm telling you, I'm not gullible, you can say gullible. She says to me in an interview on live, you know when you the green room and they come round to you and you're live on the Eurovision, does anybody tell you look like me? Was that a wee bit of a homage to me? And I was like, actually, oh my God. And it wasn't, but I think she thought I was just like trying to go that route. But it wasn't. Myself and Jerry and my mum, and they literally went and got all these different outfits, started a camera in Jerry's kitchen, and did a performance in front of them all. And the best one on camera was the one. Right. RT provided me with a week's worth of clothes as well. I didn't think I was getting that for the whole procedures and everything else as well. But
did they consult you on any of the work?
No,
stuff?
they actually don't.
They
actually don't. I think as well. I was dressed way too old for my age, and you know I really was. I was just, there was no halter necks, there was no I would have loved, you know, even during the day to be going on in a pair of dungarees. There was nothing like that.
Right.
Like, God forbid you're the Eurovision singer and you walk around in a pair of jeans. You know, this kind of thing.
Do you remember the other performances of your year well?
And yeah, I have my faves.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think is the most unique?
Of course I have.
Your favourites of the year?
Well, Dan International won.
Of course.
And, I mean, outstanding for the country as well, because she wasn't even going to be recognised in her own country because she was transsexual.
Of course.
And that, like, for them times, I know now, it's like, you know, second language. She would have had a fight. Of course, I loved, who else did I like? Oh, there was a madman, Gildo. Gildo loves you. I think he was Germany, I'm not sure. He was madcap. He was, and this is what wins Eurovision now. I had no clue, right? Oh no, the ballots are gone.
What do you think the jury bases their votes on? Because I know nobody.
I have to
knows.
say,
It's all
it is literally a Pandora's box wrapped in, I don't know what, for me, in a unicorn horn. I don't know. I do know that there's neighbours. It's your neighbouring country. I know that's definitely a sway. I know myself as well, if somebody's not a threat to them, or if they're way down, they'll get a 10. So this hurt me. This really, really got me. Because it was the first year of the phone vote, my year. And so that should have never been a thing, the politics, because it was solely public.
How do you think the contest has changed since your performance?
Again, anything I say is absolutely no disrespect to anybody, but I don't get like countries like Australia being in the Eurovision. Also, these are famous people in their own country as well, so that was never a thing. But to be already like up there in charts, that wasn't the way it was growing up for me. And we wouldn't have known who ABBA was only for the Eurovision. Celine Dion won. Do you know, people like that? They definitely got a lot of exposure, but then their fame came after and it was like a whirlwind. But these are established already and they're magnificent, but there's so many platforms for them already.
Do you keep up with Eurovision since being part of it?
I'll watch it and I'll see what my country's entrant is going to be and things like that. But if somebody mentioned a year, a country and a date, I'm not going to know that. But when I was a child, I would have. Like when I was growing up, I absolutely would have. Do you know that kind of way? Because this was the only thing on telly. It was huge. Everybody waited for the year. Mm-hmm. Like there's nobody out the street playing. Everybody was in their house watching the Eurovision. Every single person.
How has life been like since the contest? And who are you outside of being a singer? And
mammy. But I'm only a mammy 8 years. I had Frankie. I was lucky enough to get Frankie. Blessed with him. I turned 40 pregnant. I travelled around. I was in a few different countries. Went to live in Australia. Went to live in America. I definitely sang in most places. Sang everywhere I went. And life is good, and when you're not thinking about life, that's when you're living.
Okay, the last two questions are, what is your favourite entry of all time throughout the history of the contest?
Oh, I want to straight away say Niamh Kavanagh.
Okay.
And as well, can I just pick the voice as well? Please, can I have the two?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, there you go. No, I can say that straight off. There has been nothing to the standard of Niamh and the hauntingness and the just the originality of Emma. Unreal. I blew my mind.
And have you heard the entries for this year?
Not yet. No, not yet.
Okay.
Running around after this I'm doing Roblox and
yeah.
Not even Minecraft. I'm being diddly now. I think Minecraft's so over. I don't know.
Well, that's all I have. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh my god, thank you so much. It was a lovely chat.
Yes, I appreciate the time.
Anyway, this concludes my collection of some of my favorite and most unique performances to grace Eurovision throughout its long history. If you've made it to the end, thank you. I was originally going to make this a huge long deep dive into the history of the contest itself and all of its politics and controversies, but after writing about 5 pages, I realized that it overshadowed what I really wanted to focus on, which was the music and the weirdness. So I opted instead to come in with the assumption that you probably already know what Eurovision is and instead highlight some of these great performances. I may still do a deep dive into Eurovision and Intervision in the future if you are interested in that. It would also be a lot more work and a lot less opinionated and, passionate. Anyway, thanks for allowing me this self-indulgence. I can't wait to bitch about this year's entries. At the time of writing this, they haven't all been announced yet, so I'm biding my time in the meanwhile. I really hope Nemo's not involved in any way. I didn't even talk about Joost Klein here, but the Netherlands should be the ones hosting this year, and that's all I'm gonna say on that. Anyway, it's crazy, it's party. My name is Circumcision, and I'll see you all very soon.